We have learned not to place our faith in the regulatory agencies that are supposed to be acting in the public interest. We have learned not to believe the advertising that sells us presidents the way that it sells us useless products. We have learned not to trust politicians who will promise the voter anything on the eve of election, but who spend the next 4 years raising taxes for unwanted wars, useless weaponry, moon dust, and technological boondoggles like the SST, while ignoring the desperate needs of the people. We will not appeal anymore to the conscience of institutions, because institutions have no conscience. If we want them to do what is right, we must make them do what is right. That will not be easy. The sacrifices that are going to have to be made are probably not, for the most part, going to have to be direct sacrifices. There are things that people probably can do without. There are electrical toothbrushes, there are electrical swizzle sticks, and the need to mow their lawn once every 3 days, which probably, if they have an electric lawnmower, which probably constitute just really silly kinds of wastages of electricity. But the primary place where people are going to have to be changing their lifestyles is not going to be in giving up air conditioning so much as giving up flip-top beer cans that they're going to be throwing away. Instead, they're going to be using something which isn't using that massive allocation of electricity which goes into making an aluminum can. They'll be using a bottle which can be reused perhaps 20, 25 times. It's probably not going to be it's going to be less a direct sacrifice of the utilization of power by people than of the utilization of things that are manufactured with the use of power that people are simply going to come to find as being superfluous.
You seem to think that our technology isn't capable of handling the problem. We must return to a more simple way of life. I don't think you're going to find a lot of people are willing to give up the air conditioning.
Yeah, I don't think that we were advocating that everybody at this point in time has to give up air conditioning. What I was trying to say is that this movement transcends traditional political boundaries. It's a movement of working men who are breathing poison every day in the mines and mills and who raise their children downwind of smoke-belching factories. It's a movement of people from ghettos and barrios, the worst of this country's eco-catastrophes. It includes suburbanites who have come to realize that the effects of environmental irresponsibility do not stop at city limits. It is the movement of a generation that is determined to make this country a place that we can live in 30 years from now. For many of us, these concerns are not something new. For the past decade, some of the brightest and most optimistic of us have been embittered, exiled, jailed, or killed. And we have learned some things. We have learned that the issues we have taken on one by one over the past years are symptoms of something fundamentally wrong. We have been given hope for brief periods, but we have always been betrayed. Lately, we've not even been given much hope. The issues we have raised are being responded to with hollow rhetoric, deceptive budgetary manipulations, and plans for meaningless bureaucratic reorganization. Earth Day across the country have pledged to go on after tomorrow. So will the National Office. So far, the National Office are illustrative of some of the tactics we will employ. Stock proxy fights. Across the country, citizens are going to stockholders' meetings to demand that corporations begin to put people's lives ahead of profits. They are not asking for concessions on isolated issues. They are insisting that the public interest be permanently represented on decision-making boards. Lawsuits. The courts stopped the Alaskan pipeline. Companies that do not respect the people's right to a decent environment and governmental agencies that fail in their duty to protect the public interest can expect to be sued. Demonstrations. In Charleston, West Virginia, Blair, Nebraska, Redwood City, California, and scores of other communities, people will be dramatically confronting industries tomorrow and in the future in an effort to save the environment. We have found that there is often simply no other way of jolting a company into socially responsible behavior. Research. This organization and many groups will be conducting investigations of corporations and of governmental agencies at the local and state level, even as those have been conducted by Nader's raiders at the federal level. There will be vigorous efforts to single out the worst offenders and to provide alternatives which are socially responsible. Elections. The environmental movement is going to be a powerful force in the politics of this country for the foreseeable future. Many local groups have told us that they plan to join forces in statewide and regional organizations that will endorse and oppose specific candidates in the 1970 elections. Some people in this movement regard electoral politics as irrelevant, but the majority seems to feel that with so few ways of bringing about real change, we cannot afford to abandon the political arena to two calcified parties. There is an unease across this country today. People know something is wrong. The war is part of it, but it's deeper than the war. The more thoughtful critics of the war have long known that the war was just a symptom of this something which is deeper. Black people and poor people have long known what is wrong. Now the garbage and the crowding and the stench and unhappiness and crime have spread beyond the ghetto, and a whole society is coming to realize that it must drastically alter its course. A lot of strategies have been used in the past by people seeking change. Movements have come and gone. Yes, one of the elements in the new organization, hopefully, is going to be a research foundation, which we hope to get some funding from various other foundations for. It will be, hopefully, compiling a lot of research that's been done by various diverse groups and is being done by other various diverse groups presently, and put it in some kind of a usable form, design strategies around it which local groups and regional groups can put into practice. We also hope to do some original research in areas that simply haven't been adequately researched, something like the ecology of the poor. How do environmental problems specifically affect urban inner-city areas or rural areas to which attention simply hasn't been paid from this perspective? We'd also like to be trying to deal, in a much greater sense than has been done in the past, with the particular environmental implications for labor. Health conditions inside plants are frequently a very intensified form of conditions outside plants. If a mile away from a company you can smell it, the people that are working inside the building that's producing that smell frequently find the conditions more intolerable.
Do I infer then that you have medical and scientific?
No. Certainly not. I not only have no plans for this fall, I have no political plans at all.
Dennis, you mentioned some of the more important speeches. Are these the ones key to April 22nd over the country?
The anti-war movement in this country has had a number of forces working against it, some of them being the clever rhetoric of people in the administration, some of it being the weariness of the press, perhaps, with regard to some of the war issues, and a whole series of other forces. I don't think that it's safe to, in any sense, to say that the ecology movement has been a diverting force. A number of the people who've been involved in what we're talking about have been involved in the war for a long time and will continue to be involved in the war. And I think that the anti-war movement, whether or not the moratorium continues, and it has now decided to go out of business, will continue. It's not an organization, it really is a movement, and it's going to continue until the war is stopped.
But there's only so much energy for positive.
What it says tomorrow in a number of places throughout the country, people will be dramatically confronting industry. Now, what does that mean?
What it means is that some fingers are going to be pointed. The teach-in has always been viewed as an educational activity. In the very early stages, a lot of people thought that meant that we should be bringing professors in to lecture to students about problems of the environment. But very rapidly, people came to an awareness that a dialogue between professors and students wasn't really where it's at, unless we started talking about specific instances of environmental abuse in local areas and call them to the attention not only of the academic communities, but also to the real communities, the communities outside the walls of the universities, that nothing was going to be done. One means of accomplishing this educational task is by massing people outside some kind of an office, and once you then have the attention of them through the media or by simply your physical presence there in a place where people frequently pass, you call attention to specific instances of environmental abuse perpetuated by that industry.
You're not talking about massing people outside the industry.
There will be some of that occurring. One of the examples here was in Redwood City. There's going to be, I think, a demonstration of workers and of a number of students and of a number of community-involved people against a plant there that has been challenged by a number of agencies over the course of several years to alter its practices, which has not altered them at all, except to now begin to shut off some of its pollutant activities during the day and increase them during the night when they're less visible. That's going to be outside a specific industry, even as the other two here, one of them is going to, well, both of the other two are also going to be outside specific industries, and they're going to be saying, even as the people in New York are going to be saying against their Consolidated Edison, that what you're doing is wrong, and we're going to stop you.
What is the Edison City done?
It would probably be unwise. It's a question which an awful lot of people are now finding themselves facing. In Huntington Beach, California, they recently stopped the expansion of a fossil fuel burning power plant. And they started then wondering, well, where are we going to get our electricity? And they tried to move that plant, and the best location to move it seemed to be up in Malibu Beach. But the people in Malibu Beach are even richer than the people in Huntington Beach, and so they stopped it up there as well. And people then had to start questioning themselves, if we're really having that much difficulty generating power, are there some things that we're doing right now which are wasting power? Is it possible to define a new kind of lifestyle in which it's not going to be necessarily to expand indefinitely the production of more and more and more electricity? And I think that out of this questioning are going to be emerging some new kinds of trends where people are recognizing that a great many of the things that are presently being done for the sake of convenience by electrical power simply are unnecessary. And out of that, hopefully, will be, at some point in time, beginning to emerge some new kinds of approaches to how you survive in a modern technological society without abusing your environment as much as we presently seem to be doing. But also, this is one of the few areas where there might actually be some technological redemption to be resulting in the immediate future from the stopping of environmental degradation on the parts of industries, power plants as well as others. In the long run, we feel that it's much better to make these short-run sacrifices, have an occasional brownout here and there, but start to develop a lifestyle which is probably going to be far less disastrous to the course of mankind than the one that we're presently pursuing.
Tear it down and start all over.
Stop it for the moment and try to define a new course.
After the initial
Half hour of prime time on all the networks of the country and get front page stories in all of the newspapers. We have industries that have advertising budgets which enable them to spend more on advertising in a single day, a typical day, than we've had to organize our entire program around April 27th over the course of 4 months. When you start taking on something such as the internal combustion engine and you find yourself facing the vested billions of dollars in Detroit, the vested billions of dollars in the petroleum industry, the highway lobby complex, the proclivities of legislators to develop freeways through their districts in a pork barreling sense. When you're taking on something which has a vested interest on of $2,000 in every American family in a civilization which sees the coat of arms on a Cadillac as perhaps its highest form of grandeur, you're tackling a pretty significant kind of problem, and that's just a very small aspect of the overall problem that we're challenging. Now, if those forces swing into fray, and if they do deceive people and make people believe that something meaningful really is being done when actually nothing is flowing but rhetoric, then there's some possibility for co-optation. We're going to be militating against that and doing everything that we can. I think it's probably pretty safe to say that nothing approximating the free market system has been in existence over the course of the last 25 years. People are finding out what they want from commercials, for the most part, which are creating needs for things that simply nobody does want until they suddenly find out it's a result of a series of commercials that if you're going to have a successful sex life, this is what you really must have.
Well, in other words, you must sell them a different idea.
In some sense, you can say that we're selling them a different idea.
Did you say
A fantastic number. It's pretty safe to say that it will, I think, probably be in the millions. There are going to be a great many demonstrations in a great many communities. We have something now approaching 12,000 high schools that are involved, 2,000 universities that are doing things on their campus and in surrounding communities, a couple of thousand community organizing groups that are taking place, that are organizing without particular reference either to high schools or to colleges. And out of that fantastic assemblage of gatherings, it's safe to say that, there will be millions of people that will be doing something to observe this day of environmental concern.